Welcome back everyone to the ultimate guide to Blender 3D rigging and animation. So now let's think about weighting our actual mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my actual rig. I'm going to grab my woman and press Control P, and that's not the right way around. I'm going to grab my lady robot, grab my rig, Control P, and with automatic weights, and let Blender think about it, and hey presto, now the magic should have happened. So what we're going to do now is go to object mode, put it on pose mode, and hopefully everything should move really nicely now. So if I press G, we can see we have a fully, hopefully, working mesh. Now, if you want to move them both at the same time, you can just put X-axis on, grab the hands, for instance, and there we go. We can make a fly or whatever. Now, let's check the other things, though. So we're looking at these pole points to see how the shoulder joint is moving. You can see that you'd never move a shoulder this much, by the way. It wouldn't actually be like that. You are going to get some stretching. And the reason the stretching happens, if I come now to object mode and I go back to my rig, you can see that the higher or more dense the actual mesh is, the better probably it's going to move. Now, you can see as well that the way this mesh is built, it's got a lot of vertices and edges in the actual joints, which is really important. Now, if this had a few more of these coming out here, you're probably not going to get quite so much stretching. The other thing is as well that you need to take into account, let me just grab my bones, is the fact that the more bones you have, the better the rig is probably going to move as well. This is why when you look at Disney characters and you look at their rigs, they're extremely complex. Some of their rigs have like 100 bones in their face, for instance, just for all those tiny muscles moving and things like that. You'll also see this if you look at the rigs from the film of World of Warcraft. You'll see exactly the same thing. These very, very complex rigs, and they make the muscle actually move underneath the skin and things like that. Really, really complex stuff. But we're just doing, back in the real world, we're just doing a basic rig. So now let's make sure all the legs move in the correct way, which they should do, so there's no problem there. Let's make sure the head, so if I rotate the head, for instance, it's moving in a realistic way. Let's make sure as well that the torso or the hips is also moving. You can see now she's moving in a very, very realistic way. Then that's exactly what we want, really. The other thing is as well, you can see if she jumps now, you can see she also moves in a realistic way, and that's exactly what you want. So everything now is moving. We'll check one more thing as well. If I move this torso now, yes, you can see how she moves backwards and forwards now, again, in a realistic way. So that rig is basically perfect. Really, really good. Really, really simple, basic rig. Now, the next thing we want to do then is actually do a very simple walk cycle, because what's the point in having a rig if you don't know how to do a walk cycle? Now, you will find online a ton of walk cycle references and things like that, but I actually believe they're very, very hard to actually follow along those actual walk cycles. So in other words, you'll get your reference out and you'll move her along, and then try and actually, copy the reference and move in between them. It's really, really complex. So we're not going to do that. What we're first of all going to do, we're going to go onto layout. We're going to zoom into our little robot. We're going to take this off and put it on object mode, because we really don't need to see what she actually looks like as she's moving along. You might as well see that once you've actually done the actual walk cycle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the start on on 1. And then we're going to put the end on 32. So a walk cycle based from frame 1 to 32. But the interesting thing is that we're not actually going to make the first actual keyframes on frame 1. What we're going to do is we're going to put it onto frame 0 and make the first keyframe on frame 0. This is because it will then start on frame 1, go to 32, start on frame 1 again, and it's a much more fluid walk cycle, as you'll see once we've got it actually working. Now, the next thing to discuss is the fact that we don't actually need to see all these bones actually when we're actually doing the walk cycle, because what it does is it just complicates it. It makes it a lot more things to see on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into pose mode, and I'm going to hide most of these bones. I'm going to leave the head bone just in case you want to turn her head as she's actually walking. But for me, I'm going to hide. So I'm just grabbing these bones and hiding them all. You only really want one of these bones down here. You don't actually want them both, because you'll see I can rotate her now from this bone here, which is perfectly fine. Now, the other thing is I do want to keep these bones here, but I certainly don't need the arm bones, so I can actually hide those out the way as well. And I can also hide the thigh and the shin bone out of the way as well. The one bone I do want to keep here is this one here, the root bone. And that is because I might need to move her up and down. So I think pretty much with these bones that I've got here, I can actually work with this apart from these ones on the inside. Let's hide those as well. So I'm just going into the inside, hiding those hand bones because the hands basically can be moved from here anyway. So in other words, if I'm rotating them, I can move them from here. Now, the other thing is you will see that if I come in and I press RZ, that is moving from here, straight up, from the Z axis. If you don't want that and you want to move them from the axis of the bone, if you press RY now, you can see that we're moving it from that axis. It's basically guess which axis it is because I'm never sure. I normally just go through. So is it X? Nope. Is it Z? Nope. Is it Y? Yep, that's the right one. That's normally what I do when I'm working with normals. All right, so let's go back to global. And now what we can do is we can start putting in the first part of our walk cycle. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to work on the legs. So I'm going to put it on 3. I'm just thinking if I've forgot anything before we start. I don't think so. What I am going to do though is save out my work before we start. I suggest you do the same because you've got everything set up now and you really do. If you need to go back to it, let's say you screw up your walk cycle or something like that, you want to go back to it so you've got everything set up like it is now. Now let's focus on our legs then first. So the first one I'm going to grab is this bone here. I'm going to make sure that my gizmo is on with shift spacebar, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my leg in. I'm going to pick it up slightly. So we've got a tiny bit of a bend there, as you can see. And then I'm going to rotate it back. So RX, rotate it back like so. Then I'm going to get the next leg. So this one over here. I'm going to pull this leg back like here. I'm going to make sure there's a tiny, so I'm pulling it up, tiny little bit of a bend in the bone. And then I'm going to press R and X and rotate that one. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my character is on the floor, because if I come around this way and press Control 3, I can't see through there, so I just need to put them in front. So now you can see the bones in front, and I need to drop her down. So I'm going to grab this one, I'm going to drop her down to the floor like so, and now I'm going to make sure that she's actually probably tilting forward a little bit. So you can see here that this is not tilted, it's not in the right place. So in other words, I'm going to just put that back a minute. I'm going to bend the leg up a little bit more. I'm going to bring this one down because this actually is the most important part of it. So if I bring it back now, tilt it a little bit, so RX, like so, bring it up a little bit, and there we go. Now we can see we're getting somewhere. All right, so let's tilt it up a little bit, like so. Let's bring this down now, just a little bit more. And now you can see it's just in the floor there, and that's exactly what I want. And now I'm going to do is I'm going to mess around with this one. I'm going to bring it down. Like so. I'm going to try and tilt it just a little bit. Like so. I'm going to move it a little bit. Like so. And I'm just going to see how much I need to bring it up to actually have it bending. And I think then I can come to this center one. This one. Oh, should be a center one in there. Yeah, like that. So let's go back now and just recap. So we can see if I bring this down just a little bit more. Pull this up a little bit. Like so, make it go up. All right, so that is a good start for the legs. So you can see we've got a slight tilt on the knee going up. We've got a slight tilt on this leg going up. We've got this foot actually bending back this way and this foot bending this way. Now, don't worry, because in the end of this, we can actually go in and refine it. So I will actually show you how we go in and actually refine what we're actually doing here, because it's pretty complicated. But this is the actual kind of angle that you're going to want for your leg. You can, of course, pull this back, pull it back a little bit, and that might actually work out better. Put this one a bit further forward. Yeah, I think actually I'm going to leave it alone. And then as I work on it a little bit more, then I'll be able to tell rather than keep fiddling with it in these stages. So basically just have your legs set up something like that. All right, everyone. So I'll see you on the next one. On the next one, we'll actually start with the hands. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.